Welcome to another episode of rAmithedevil Stories, where we dive into some of the toughest and most controversial situations people face in relationships. Today, we're exploring a post that's causing quite a stir. It's about a guy who's caught in a difficult spot because his girlfriend won't let him cheat. Yes, you heard that right. It sounds like something out of a drama, but it's a very real problem for him. And it raises questions about trust, control, and freedom in relationships. Right from the start, there's a strong tension simmering beneath the surface. On one side, there's the girlfriend who seems to want to hold the reins tightly, keeping close tabs on everything her boyfriend does. On the other side is the boyfriend, struggling with his own desires for freedom and exploration outside the boundaries of their relationship. This story isn't just about cheating. It's about the battle between control and independence, between loyalty and personal needs. As you listen or read along, be ready for an emotional roller coaster. You'll hear about love and trust, but also jealousy, pain, and frustration. By the end, you might find yourself questioning what's fair, what's acceptable, and what happens when people grow apart inside the same relationship. So, buckle up, and let's dive into this complicated story that's far from simple. The story starts off like many others. Two people meeting and falling for each other. The boyfriend, who we'll call OP for original poster, met his girlfriend about 3 years ago at a friend's party. There was an instant spark between them. They shared laughs, inside jokes, and long conversations late into the night. At first, everything felt easy and natural. Trust was strong and excitement filled their days. OP remembers how carefree those times were, how they both felt like they had found something special. But as the months passed, subtle changes began to appear. The girlfriend started showing signs of jealousy. At first, it was small things. A question about who OP was texting. A comment about how much time he spent with friends. Over time, these grew into more controlling behaviors. She began checking his phone when he wasn't around and called him constantly to know where he was. Text messages from friends, especially female ones, became a source of tension. OP felt the walls closing in. The freedom and trust that once defined their relationship began slipping away. What used to be fun and light-hearted started to feel like a trap. Every time he tried to hang out with friends or even just take a break, he was met with suspicion and accusations. Despite this, OP still loved his girlfriend deeply, hoping things would improve. But a growing voice inside him whispered that something wasn't right, that he was losing himself. The relationship was no longer the joyful connection it once was. It was becoming suffocating. With his feelings shifting, OP found himself caught in a tough mental battle. He wasn't sure what he wanted anymore. On one hand, he still loved his girlfriend and wanted to make things work. On the other, he felt trapped and desperate for space. He tried to understand these confusing emotions swirling inside him. Love, frustration, and a yearning for freedom all tangled together. Eventually, OP decided to talk to his girlfriend about his need for space. He explained gently that he needed time to breathe and be himself sometimes. But instead of understanding, she reacted with anger and suspicion. She accused him of already planning to cheat on her, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. This accusation shocked OP. It broke down the trust between them further, making open communication almost impossible. His frustration grew as the walls closed in tighter. He wanted to be honest about his feelings, but feared the consequences of being misunderstood. He loved his girlfriend and cared about their relationship, but the constant distrust made him feel like he was walking on eggshells. The more he tried to express himself, the more distant and controlling she became. This created a painful, inner conflict for OP, wanting to stay loyal and keep his love alive while also craving freedom and relief from the pressure. This emotional turmoil set the stage for the next chapter in OP's story, a chapter filled with difficult choices and tough consequences. But for now, OP was stuck, unsure of where to turn next. As the pressure in the relationship mounted, OP's mind began wandering to thoughts he never expected to have. Cheating, something he had always seen as a betrayal, started to appear in his thoughts not out of malice but as a desperate form of escape. The idea of cheating became less about hurting his girlfriend and more about reclaiming a part of himself that felt trapped and suffocated. It was like a silent scream for freedom, a way to prove he still had control over his own life. OP was terrified of losing himself completely. He feared that if he stayed locked in this controlling relationship, he would become a shadow of the man he used to be. The endless surveillance, constant accusations, and lack of personal space made him feel like a prisoner. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that maybe cheating was the only way to break free, to remind himself that he was still a person with desires and choices. But these thoughts brought a painful emotional struggle. OP still loved his girlfriend. Loyalty tugged at his heart, pulling him back from the edge. He wanted to believe they could fix things, that love could survive this storm. Yet the desire to break free, to breathe, grew stronger every day. It was a battle between his conscience and his needs, between staying faithful and finding release. The suspense built around his next steps. Would he cross the line and betray the trust he still held? Or would he hold back, trying to survive in a relationship that felt more like a cage? OP was trapped in a dangerous limbo, where every decision could change his life forever. The turning point came one evening during a heated argument that neither OP nor his girlfriend could forget. She laid down an ultimatum: total control, or the relationship was over. She demanded to know his whereabouts at all times, access to his phone, and zero contact with anyone she didn't approve of. The pressure was crushing, and OP felt like his freedom was slipping away completely. The fight was intense. Voices raised, emotions raw. Years of built-up frustration exploded in that small room. OP tried to explain how suffocating he felt, how he needed trust instead of control. But she insisted that her demands were the only way to keep their love alive. When he hesitated or questioned her rules, she threatened to end things. And this threat felt like a sharp knife cutting through their bond. OP was desperate and confused. Was this really love, or just a need to dominate and control? The line blurred in that moment, leaving him shaken. He wanted to protect the relationship, but at what cost? Giving up all his freedom felt like losing himself entirely. The fight left their dynamic forever changed. After that night, doubts flooded OP's mind. The question no longer was just about trust. It was about whether this relationship could survive the suffocating control, or if it was destined to break apart. OP felt like he was standing at a crossroads, uncertain which path to take, but knowing the next steps would be critical. Feeling overwhelmed and confused, OP decided to reach out to his close friends for support. He opened up about the growing tension in his relationship, the controlling behavior from his girlfriend, the constant mistrust, and his own struggles with feeling trapped. He hoped that talking to others might help him find some clarity. As he shared his story, the reactions from his friends varied widely. Some were blunt and straightforward. They told him to leave. They said no one deserves to feel controlled or suffocated in a relationship, and that his happiness and freedom should come first. They warned that staying could only lead to more pain and regret. Other friends took a different approach. They encouraged OP to try harder, to communicate more openly, to set boundaries, and to work through the problems together. They believed love meant compromise, and that some relationships go through tough phases that can be healed with effort and patience. This mixed advice only made OP feel more lost. Which path was the right one? Was he selfish for wanting space and freedom, or was he just trying to survive a controlling relationship? The conflicting opinions made him doubt himself and question his own values. Alone with these thoughts, OP began reflecting deeply. He realized he needed to define what he could and couldn't accept in a relationship. What were his limits? How much control was too much? This reflection became crucial as he prepared to face the next chapter of his emotional journey. As days turned into weeks, OP found himself sinking deeper into a fog of isolation and anxiety. The once vibrant energy he had felt at the start of the relationship was replaced by an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Even when he was physically not alone, his girlfriend's controlling behavior had pushed him into a corner where he felt trapped and unheard. At work, his mind wandered to the constant tension waiting for him at home, making it harder to focus and leaving him exhausted. Nights were the hardest. When the world quieted down, OP's thoughts became louder and darker. He would lie awake for hours, replaying fights and conversations, wondering where it all went wrong. The silence amplified his worries and fears. Was he really the bad guy? Was he being selfish for wanting freedom? Or was he the victim of a relationship that slowly turned toxic? These questions gnawed at him relentlessly, creating a bitter swirl of confusion and self-doubt. The bitterness grew inside him, slowly poisoning his ability to feel joy. Simple pleasures that used to make him happy now felt hollow. He resented the constant surveillance, the accusations, and the feeling that he had no space to breathe. Yet, beneath all the anger was a painful love, a stubborn hope that things could somehow get better. This inner conflict tore at him, leaving him emotionally drained. With every sleepless night, the weight on OP's shoulders grew heavier. The suspense built quietly but surely. He was nearing an emotional breaking point. It felt like only a matter of time before something had to give. Whether that meant fighting for the relationship, breaking free, or completely losing himself in the process. One evening, while out with friends, OP met someone new, someone who seemed genuinely interested in him. Their conversation was easy and natural, full of light teasing and smiles that made OP's heart race in a way it hadn't in a long time. For the first time since the relationship began to strain, he felt seen and desired, which sparked a dangerous thrill inside him. This new attention opened a door in OP's mind, making him imagine what it might be like to escape the suffocating control of his girlfriend. The idea of cheating suddenly seemed like a way to reclaim some freedom, a way to prove to himself that he wasn't trapped. The temptation felt powerful, like a wave pulling him toward something forbidden but exciting. At the same time, guilt gnawed at him. He thought about his girlfriend, her love, their history, and the trust that was now fraying. The thought of hurting her made his chest tighten. OP felt torn between two strong forces, the desire for freedom and the loyalty he still felt. This internal conflict twisted inside him, making it hard to think clearly. The suspense grew as OP struggled with this pull. Would he give in to temptation and risk everything? Or would he resist, holding on to what little trust remained? The story leaves us on the edge, wondering which path he will take, as the battle between temptation and conscience rages inside him. The day OP almost crossed the line began like any other. But inside, his mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. He found himself alone with the new person who had shown interest. A quiet cafe in the late afternoon, sunlight streaming softly through the windows. The air was thick with possibility, and OP's heart hammered with both excitement and dread. As they talked, laughter came easier, and the flirtation grew bolder. Every smile and glance felt like a spark lighting a fire inside him. The idea of giving in to temptation teased his thoughts, whispering promises of escape, freedom, and relief from the weight he carried. It was a chance to feel alive again, even if just for a moment. But beneath that thrilling pull was a deeper, quieter voice. His girlfriend's voice echoing in his mind. He remembered her laughter, the little moments they once shared, and the love that had brought them together. He recalled the fights and ultimatums, the pain of feeling controlled but still cared for. This voice reminded him of loyalty, of the promises made, and the consequences of breaking them. His heart pulled him in two directions. He longed for freedom, but guilt and love held him back. The cafe's cozy corner suddenly felt like a crossroads where his future would be decided. Every second stretched into eternity as he battled with himself. In the end, OP didn't cheat that day. But standing on the edge, he knew the choice was far from over. The tension between his desire for freedom and the ties of love created an emotional cliffhanger. Would he stay or fall? The story leaves us hanging, waiting to see which path he will choose next. Not long after that tense day, OP's girlfriend began to sense that something was off. The small changes in his behavior, the distracted looks, the guarded answers, the sudden distance, did not escape her notice. One evening, unable to hold back her worry any longer, she confronted him. The conversation quickly turned intense. Her voice trembled with hurt and suspicion as she demanded honesty. OP felt the pressure like a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. They clashed in a raw and emotional fight, words flying like arrows, each one exposing the fragile cracks in their relationship. She accused him of planning to cheat, while he struggled to explain the confusing storm inside his heart. Caught between love and rebellion, OP felt torn apart. On one hand, he loved her deeply. The memories, the dreams, the shared moments that still held meaning. On the other, he battled a fierce urge to break free from the control and suffocation that had taken root over time. He tried to tell her how trapped he felt, how the constant pressure was breaking him down. But his words only seemed to make the fight worse, stirring more pain and anger. In the aftermath, silence settled over them like a thick fog. Both felt wounded, unsure of what the future held. The love they once celebrated now seemed overshadowed by distrust and frustration. The emotional roller coaster had reached a critical point, and the relationship teetered dangerously close to breaking. The question lingered heavy in the air. Could they repair what was unraveling, or was this the beginning of the end? The suspense hung thick, leaving the story poised on the edge of a painful decision. After days of restless nights and endless thinking, OP finally reached a crossroads. He knew he couldn't keep living in the tension between love and freedom, control and rebellion. It was time to make a decision. Either stay and fight to fix the relationship or walk away and seek a fresh start. He weighed the pros and cons carefully. Staying meant trying to rebuild trust, setting new boundaries and hoping his girlfriend could loosen her grip enough for both of them to breathe. He feared that the control might never truly fade, but also hoped their love could survive the storm. Walking away promised freedom, relief from the suffocation, and a chance to rediscover himself. Yet, it came with the pain of losing someone he had deeply cared for and the uncertainty of what life would look like alone. In the end, O.P. chose a path, one that surprised even himself. He decided to stay, not out of fear or obligation, but because a part of him still believed in the possibility of healing and growth. He knew it wouldn't be easy. It would take honest conversations, patience, and perhaps professional help. But he was willing to try. However, O.P. left the story hanging, asking the listeners and viewers what they thought he should do next. Was his choice brave or foolish? Would love be enough to overcome the controlling shadows? Or was this just delaying the inevitable? The suspense remained thick, leaving everyone wondering what the future held for O.P. and his girlfriend, and if the struggle for freedom and love could find balance in the end. As O.P. wraps up his story, he turns to the audience with a heavy heart and an open mind. "Am I the devil?" he asks, his voice full of uncertainty. "Am I wrong for feeling this way? Trapped? Torn between wanting freedom and wanting to stay loyal?" These questions hang in the air, inviting listeners and viewers to weigh in and reflect on the complexity of his situation. He thinks deeply about trust, how fragile it can be, and how easily it can break under pressure. Love, he realizes, isn't always simple or perfect. Sometimes it feels like a battlefield where two people struggle to understand each other's needs. Freedom and boundaries clash in his mind, making it hard to find peace. Is it selfish to crave space when love feels suffocating? Or is it fair to want respect for one's own limits? O.P. invites the audience to share their thoughts, to judge if he's the villain or the victim, or perhaps something in between. He wants advice, support, or even just a listening ear from those who have faced similar struggles. His story is not just his own. It's a reflection of many relationships caught in the push and pull of control and freedom. He ends with a thoughtful note. Maybe love isn't about having all the answers, but about choosing to keep asking the hard questions. The cliffhanger remains. What will happen next in O.P.'s journey? The audience is left thinking, reflecting, and waiting for the next chapter.